The Football Trash Talk for Real Fans podcast is an unscripted and free-flowing conversation that may touch on mature subjects. While the opinions are real, the research probably isn't, and we can't help that Atticus will probably talk about the Knicks.
And here we go.
He trucked dudes. It wasn't just in a preseason game. He did it pretty consistently. He left dudes saying, "What happened?"
Fletcher Cox is going to be a Brown. How do you feel about that? Anyway.
And I'm just going on eye test here, right? Like, I like the look of this coaching staff, you know?
Alright, enough of this. Let's see what kind of shit we get into today. Lloyd, it's all yours.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of topics. Here we are for another week, but we talked about the draft. We finished that up, but ESPN came out with their win total predictions. We can talk about that. Aaron Donald's beating people up on the street. We can talk about that.
Oh man, what a story!
But the first thing we're actually going to talk about is there's a little signing that happened this week. And with that signing, I just have one question for you guys.
The 2020 Sack King, is that the signing you're talking about?
The Javion Clowney is now a Brown. And my question for you guys is, what size T-shirts do you wear? So I know what size to get for the Super Bowl champion Browns T-shirts, because you can't spell Super Bowl without Clowney. It works. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the logistics of that one. Just know that it works. But yeah,
talking about nausea, right? And we were talking about nausea. Like every time Groman opens up his mouth lately, like I just get nauseous. Like we go from the defunct franchise of the Cleveland Browns to, you know, I'm not really going to participate in too much trash talk, except every now and then throw out a tidbit of knowledge to like every team suck. Like you have there's no fucks for any team out there other than the Browns. Like you attack everyone, man.
Well, you know what changed it for me. So yeah, when I first got into the group, I was just kind of like I would try to look at everything like with like stats and make actual like, you know, what I thought were reasonable comments on different things.
You held on to what you had.
Yeah, I mean that's what I had, right? So about 2 years ago, I don't even remember who it was in the group, but there was someone who posted something about the Eagles having the number 3 receiving core, and they posted this like, you know, article or whatever, and it said, you know, Eagles listed as the number 3 receiving core in the league, and this was right after the Browns got OBJ, and so that same article said the Browns are the number 1 receiving core in the league. So I just put something like, well, guess who's number 1, and you know, the flex emoji or whatever. The dude started arguing with me about it, and I was like, literally like, okay, so wait. The article you linked says this. So they're right about the Eagles being number 3, but wrong about the Browns being number 1. And he's like, yeah, exactly. And that's why I said, screw this. No fucks given. Browns are the best. I don't care. And that's what birthed what you see now. And then, of course, we won 11 wins in our Super Bowl. Say it with me, Super Bowl contenders per ESPN. So, you know.
We need to go into the archives and pull that post up, because whatever resource or source that is linked to, we need to ban forever because there's no reason why the Eagles should have had the number 3 receiving core anytime recently.
Yeah, I just, well, and it's funny, like I said, the only reason why I commented is because I clicked on it and it had the Browns at number 1. I just made the one little comment, and the dude, it was like a good back and forth for like 10 posts where he was like arguing with me about it. I'm like, well, dude, the very resource you linked says this. And after that, I'm like, screw it. I'm done trying to like look at things logically. Browns are bust. That's just the way it is. Now, of course, we proceeded to go like 6-10 or whatever that season, but that's not the point here.
Right.
The point is 2022 is our year. Super Bowl, Super Browns. Get used to it. You think it's bad now. Just wait.
I think that was the year that Aguilar dropped everything that went his way. And you guys, he got a deal this year, so maybe there was some truth to it.
He's going to want to drop everything again.
I'll tell you what, though. Chris brought up Clowney getting signed, and he got a prove-it deal. I don't know. I think he's going to have a good year. I mean, we can make fun of him all we want for not having. I think he had a total of the same number of wins that what's his name? What's the quarterback's name? I forget. I think he had 0 sacks this past year, but
he was also injured all year. Like,
stop making excuses already with the excuses.
He played 8
you got to sign him.
He was injured. That's not an excuse.
Played 8 games.
The dude only played 8 games. He was
And
injured
0 sacks.
So he played 8 games and had 0 sacks.
Look, okay, so here's the thing. If someone, while he was out, had been paying attention to the podcast, I've gone in depth. I don't think he's like the answer to the thing. I think they signed the type of contract I was happy with, because like I was worried the Browns were going to pay for the name Jadeveon Clowney more than they were going to play for the stats. So 1-year deal that's incentive laden, I'm fine with that. Like, we'll see.
But Chris, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm actually saying the way I started out was I think he's going to have a good year. He got a prove it deal, which echoes what you just said. I also think that there are certain players that play up to the not the expectation, but they play up to the stats that their peers are producing. And that Cleveland Browns defensive line, as much as I like to talk shit about teams and players and whatever the case may be, I think the Browns have a pretty good defensive. Well, they cleaned up their secondary. Their defensive front was their strength to begin with. You bring in a guy who you know when healthy can produce. You got Myles Garrett on the other side. He can only have an upside. There's going to be a lot of attention to Myles Garrett anyway, which is going to create opportunities for Clowney to say, see, this is why y'all should have signed me in the first place, even though it's a byproduct of the fact that they're double teaming other players on your line. So he's going to have a good year. It makes the Browns, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, but that much more validated in the conversation of, let's say, playoff contenders. Let's say that. I'm not going to take it a step further than that, but it certainly validates them.
Well, the one thing I'll say about Clowney, right, is we're not looking him to come in and be Myles Garrett on the left side of the line, right?
No.
We're looking for him to replace Olivier Vernon, who until he came on in the last bit of last year, I think he only had like 5 sacks most of the year. So if you're asking me opposite Myles Garrett, can Jadeveon Clowney get 5 to 7 sacks? If that's what we need, I totally think he's capable of doing that. And he's at a team-friendly contract, more or less.
Can I ask you a question, Chris?
Yeah, go ahead.
Being that you brought up Olivier Vernon, do you think that he's ever lived up to his contract, even as a Giant?
No, but I think it was more of an injury. He just was always injured, right? Like that's
but that comes with it, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, no, based solely on injuries. But then again, like when he was healthy, you saw why he was getting the money, right? Like I said, like with Garrett out the last couple of games of the season, he produced. And he was there, and he was able to maintain that Garrett type pressure on the defense. Now we also had some good guys in the middle that helped him out. But no, he was injured too much. It's kind of how I feel about Denzel Ward. The dude's a Pro Bowler when healthy. The problem is he's missing 4 or 5 games a year. It's the same kind of thing with him, and that's
Mike knows all about that, being an Eagles fan, because they've got talent that stayed injured, and because of that, they weren't able to produce.
For the better part of 4 or 5 years.
Right. Olivier Vernon, even when he was a Giant, I felt like, I bought his jersey, right? But the guy was never healthy, consistent enough to be what they signed him to be. And that's why he got traded. It wasn't because he wasn't talented. It's because while he was on when he was on our roster, he missed just as many games as he played.
Well, that's kind of the thing with Odell Beckham, right? I mean, all the talent in the world, but it doesn't matter if it's sitting on your sideline because he's when's the last time he played a full season completely healthy, right? We're going back 3-4 years now. And that's kind of the thing. And that's why, like I've said, like I like him, but I wouldn't be upset if they traded him just because I don't know if he's worth the money he makes anymore.
Jarvis Landry was a better pickup than Odell Beckham for you guys. I'm sorry. He just was.
Yeah. I mean, if Odell had been, if we got like 2017 Odell, then by all means. But and it's not his fault. You can't help injuries. Like, no one goes out there wanting to tear their ACL, obviously, but it is what it is. And especially with, we're going to have to pay money to keep Chubb. We're going to have to pay money to keep Baker, to keep that line together. Like, and I've touched on this, we can't be paying, like, between him and Landry, we're paying like $32 million between the two of them to receivers.
Well, think about the first year Odell Beckham Jr. joined the Cleveland Browns. Injury wasn't a big factor for him. His mindset and him. I'm sorry.
Sorry, he had that sports hernia all year. That came out. He was playing injured all year.
Okay, but a large part of what the problem that he had was chemistry between him and Baker Mayfield. He was always frustrated that he wasn't being thrown. I can remember ESPN throwing a montage of highlights up of Odell Beckham Jr.'s frustration within the offensive game plan in Cleveland. And part of the problem with Odell Beckham Jr., as much as we like to gloss over it because he gives you these dynamic catches and plays and whatever the case may be, is he still sometimes acts like a 12-year-old.
Right.
And I think some of it also goes to, I think he had a hard time that New York traded him. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, he loved playing in New York. And I get traded to the Cleveland Browns.
Bro,
at that time, they were still the Cleveland Browns. You know what I mean? And you're trading me to this team? Like, what the hell? Like, and it just took him a minute to get his psyche together. And, before I think he turned a corner in Cleveland, and then he got hurt again, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if he's healthy this year, we're going to see – I think we see a different outcome, right? But I also think that it's going to be hard for him to overcome the fact that Baker and Landry have some chemistry, right? Like, they have some chemistry.
Baker and everyone has chemistry.
Yeah.
Like, him and Higgins have chemistry. Him and Peoples-Jones have chemistry. It's just unfortunate timing for Odell, because the game before he got injured was that Dallas game where he caught a touchdown pass from Landry. He caught a touchdown pass for Baker. He got the game-winning scramble for 50-some-odd yards, which had me, like, screaming at the TV. Like, that was, like, his coming out game, right? Like, that's where you saw, oh, shit, this is how he's going to fit in this offense. And then, boom, next he got injured, like, in the first quarter of the Bengals game, if I'm not mistaken. So it's kind of like, and then
what'd you say? The new D-Jax.
Yeah.
That's who he is.
I mean, I like him. And everything I've read, like, he seems to, he's got Landry there. It's kind of like a calming voice. Like, like, he doesn't seem to be a problem in the locker room. The thing is, I think part of the problem was you had Baker, who's like still relatively improved, kind of looking for his way. I think he's a little bit more on stable ground now. So this year might be different, but you had Baker, who had this mega talent receiver, the big dude from New York, the bright lights and all that. And now he's in Cleveland, and Baker, I think there was just like a need to force him the ball when it wasn't there, instead of letting it happen organically. And I think that's why you saw all those chemistry problems. All that being said, if we trade, like, the only reason why I want to trade Odell is because I'm tired of seeing every 2 minutes a new article coming out about how we should trade Odell to the Patriots or trade Odell to wherever. I'm still all for the trade Odell to Dallas for Gallup and a pick, but that no one listens to me. I've seen, like, Odell the Pats for what's his name, Keneal Harry or whatever his name is, Harris, the guy, the receiver they drafted like 2 years ago, and a pick. But we'll see. I like Odell. I don't have a problem with him. My thing is just his production versus paying a receiver what we're paying a receiver, because we're going to need to give that money to Chubb, honestly.
His next stop is Tampa. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that?
I mean, if he could turn the corner like AB did, just find some humble pie. I mean, winning cures everything, right? Like, winning cures everything. Odell wasn't a huge problem in New York until they started losing drastically, right? And if the experts are right, they got Cleveland over under at 10 right now. I'll take the over right there. I'll just go out on a limb and I'll say over for Cleveland with 10 wins. So I think 11 or plus. I think Odell's fine, right? Like, if they're winning 11 plus games, I think Odell is not going to be a problem. Right, winning cures everything. A couple big plays salted in there throughout the year, in some games that he comes up with the big win or whatever. It's going to be fine. But I do agree also, like, they're not going to be able to keep him with that salary.
Let me tell you something.
Tampa makes
Cleveland
sense.
does not need Odell to win.
No, they don't.
They don't. That's Cleveland's division now. So I can't believe I just said that. But that's Cleveland's
Can
division.
you say it louder? Can we get Kelly's reaction to that? Can we? Is she home?
I can comfortably and safely say it because she's in the gym right now and she can't hear me. So, and she doesn't watch the podcast, so it doesn't matter.
Well, the thing is, so here's my take on Odell right now. Do we need him necessarily to win the division? No, I think we proved that last year. We don't need him to win the division. Where we're going to need him is there's going to be a series in the playoffs somewhere where Odell will be invaluable, whether it's running a trick play, whether it's him pulling a double team and freeing up someone else. There's going to be a series at Kansas City or not at Green Bay. We wouldn't play in the playoffs, but you get what I'm saying, where that's where we're going to need Odell. And honestly, at that point, he's worth $15 million if he gets us to the next level, So it's hard. It's tricky.
Cleveland's fun to watch right now. I'll be honest with you. They really are.
They're innovative. That's what I like about it. Like they're finding different ways to use what they have. And you're right. It is fun to watch.
I think the fact that they solidify their defense a little bit is
I like
scary,
that too.
Scary news for the rest of the division.
Absolutely.
Right? Let alone the AFC, right? I still think Buffalo's a cut above. I still think Kansas City's a cut above, and not by much. It's just, there's steps and there's progression that you go to in the NFL when you get to that level. However,
when you said Kansas
Clowney,
City, not by much, we saw that in the playoffs.
Oh,
we
yeah.
saw how you stop them. That's
well, and like I said, like we're talking about with Odell, like if Odell's healthy and at 100% in that Kansas City game, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to guarantee that's the difference, but to only lose by them by 5 points with no true,
No, but you know what it is? You got to respect Odell in a much different way than a Jarvis Landry because he's so multifaceted. Odell, you can do a wide receiver screen or wide receiver screen that's really a flea flicker, and he can turn, a 5-yard play into a 75-yard touchdown. Right. Just on virtue of that. So you definitely have to treat them differently.
Right. Well, and especially against a defense like Kansas City's that gets kind of masked by how good their offense is. Kansas City's defense, they don't, they have the stats to say they're good, but it's more because people are constantly playing catch up to that offense than they are, the defense is smothering. They don't have a horrible defense, but it's not a defense you're like, oh my God, how are we going to, we're not talking the 85 Bears or the 2000 Ravens or anything like that. So it's
what are they, a top 20 defense? I mean,
they're middle of the pack, but when you take away half a playbook, it makes it easier on the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's
I'm
what
not
happens.
really sold on their defense.
No, not at all. I'm sold on Cleveland's defense, and I like
I am too.
Clowney, whatever he did, he was hurt, didn't have any sacks, whatever. But I think that gives Cleveland an option in the draft that they don't have to. How many sacks
did he have, Mike?
He had 0.
0. Oh, I forgot. I'm sorry.
Us three combined have the same amount of sacks that Clowney did last year.
I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and defend Jadeveon Clowney to the fullest extent, but I will say he is 2 years removed from the Pro Bowl. So it's not like. And like you said, he's not going to have double teams every down like he has in other places. And honestly, over his career, he's actually a lot better at stopping the run than he is at getting sacks. That's just been his story throughout his career. He's like one of the best edge defenders against the run, like in the league over the last 5 years or whatever it is.
I got a question for you, Mike, real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
How many offers did Jadeveon Clowney turn down before accepting the Browns?
Well, that's a good question. Was it 0?
I think it was 0.
Well, in a year when we're talking about Super Bowl champion Jadeveon Clowney, we can
oh God, I hope this is recording because we need to play that on a loop.
In a year from now, we can just play that out. Put it in the intro.
That could be my new little blurb in the intro.
That should be the intro.
Yeah. I can edit around that. We can make that in a year. You better put some respect on his name when we're talking about Super Bowl champion, Jadeveon Clowney.
Oh God.
There it is. It's going to the intro. That being said, the one thing I do like about the signing for the Browns is I think that clears the way for us in the draft to definitely go linebacker with our first round pick. And They do if
I gotta step out for 1 minute, guys. I'll be right back. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
The one thing I will say is if Parsons does drop out of the get past the first 10, I think that the Browns have the ammunition to trade up. They have a couple thirds, a couple fourths. They have the ammunition to trade up, say, into that top 15 range to pick up Micah Parsons if he gets out of the top 10, which I am giddy about. So that's why
you should be giddy because it's I'd say probably top 15, right? Like he'd have to get out of the top 15. If he gets past Philly, then they could trade up to like 13, 14, 15.
Well, do you think Philly would move down? I could see. I can make an argument why Philly should trade down.
I mean, I've made that argument before. I think Philly should trade out of 12, right? Like, I like J.C. Horn, though, and I don't know how far he drops past 12.
Right.
But on the lines of what you're saying, I 100% agree. Let's them go linebacker. But there's also that linebacker out of Notre Dame that's a stud. And then there's that linebacker out of Tulsa that is also a stud. So there's options for them to go.
Well, yeah, and those two, though, and I think we both agree, like the Notre Dame or the Tulsa, either one of them, I think they're in a pretty good spot, like in the 20s to land either one of those. But this clears the way to go up and get Micah Parsons, who's, I mean, you want to talk about a defense that would scare people. Imagine adding Micah Parsons to that and having be like a heat-seeking missile. So you have Clowney on the one end, Garrett on the other, and Micah Parsons. I mean, and then we have a secondary now that at least can give those guys time to work, which is what it's all about. So I think that's the biggest upside to the Clowney signing. I'm not expecting a Pro Bowl year out of Clowney. I'm expecting a decent to solid year. But I think that the fact that it frees us now to kind of focus on linebacker in the first round, because we're still going to take a defensive end, whether it be in the second or third round. That's going to happen. We're not done at defensive end with the Clowney signing, but I think this frees us to definitely target one of those three linebackers in the first round, and God willing, it's Micah Parsons. Because
you know what? The fact that you guys have such a solid running game, by the time these guys get on the field, they're going to be fresh every time.
I just hope we have an aggressive, like, I hope our defensive coordinator, like, this is the type where I would like to see, he used to coach the Jets. What's his face? He does the sports talk shows now. He had a foot fetish.
Ryan?
Yeah, Ryan. Like a defensive coordinator that would just like blitz like 80% of the time. Like,
yeah.
that would be magical.
Podcast.
Oh, is that Kelly?
That is Kelly.
Hey Kelly, ask Atticus how he sees the AFC North pulling out. We get a guest.
Oh man.
Hey Kelly, ask Atticus real quick how he sees the AFC North shaking out.
Oh, did I miss something?
This is a trick question. No, what I said was the Browns are poised to have a great year, and that's their division to lose.
He says this every year. He almost sounds like a fan, like a Browns fan.
I mean, so Kelly, when the Browns win the Super Bowl next year, now that we've got Clowney and we're gonna have a good draft, what size Browns Super Bowl T-shirt, Super Bowl champion T-shirt do you want?
Please. Are you high?
Oh man. Well, she exited stage left now. So.
What's your daughter's name?
That's Stella Rose. She's a big
go Browns
in football, honey. There you go, Giants.
She's young and impressionable. We should. Anyway.
She's smart beyond her years. Close that door, honey.
So I feel like we've talked enough about the Browns. I will get off that wagon until next weekend. It's fine. We got some other stuff to talk about. Did you want to go through some of the? Do you have the win totals in front of you there, Lloyd? The projected win totals?
Well, we already mentioned Cleveland at 10. The Ravens are still at 11 though. So
really,
they got the Ravens at one game more than the Browns. They got the Steelers at 9, and I think the Bengals were at 7, I believe. 6.5.
I think the Bengals. I think 7's a little high for the Bengals right now. Because I think they're going to go offensive line, right? They still have a lot of questions. I feel like 7's a little high for them.
Well, they say
9's high for Pittsburgh too.
I think 9's high for Pittsburgh. I think that
I don't know how the Ravens are a game ahead of Cleveland. What What did they do in free agency that makes them believe that 11 is their win total? I haven't followed them, to be honest with you.
I think for them, it's they have a team that's good in the regular season, right? Like when, and the Browns happen to have like we're at Lambeau this year, where there's like a couple tricky away games for the Browns, which I'll fully admit, for as much as like trash as I'm talking, like we have yet to prove that we can go to a Lambeau and win against Aaron Rodgers, right? Like I don't know, I can definitely guarantee, as much as my girlfriend would like.
There aren't a lot of teams that can say that, though.
Right. But I mean, we have those type of games this year. So I do think we're going to, I see it as a 10, 11, 12 win team, depending on, how the ball bounces a couple ways. But the Ravens, they have a unique offense, which I think gives them, and it's a ball control offense on top of that. So I think that gives them an edge just because they're harder to defend against. Not every team's set up to defend the run, like you have to be against them. That being said, their biggest signing, I think they got Watkins. That's the biggest name. They re-signed a couple guys. So yeah, as far as like making the team better over last year, I mean, it depends on how good you think Watkins is, I guess. That's kind of what it comes to.
Yeah, they got 19 starters coming back from last year's team that won 11 games. That's their biggest thing, right? So as long as everybody stays healthy, I guess the thinking is they're still going to win 11 games. However, they also have a grueling schedule. I think, most of their home games are against playoff teams from last year. And that's going to be tough for them. So, Lamar has historically won as the starter. Like, I think it's like 80% of his games in the NFL. I don't think he's going to do that this year. I just don't. Like, I think their schedule is grueling. It's much harder. The division's harder. You can't look at Cleveland and say that's 2 wins. Regardless of the Steelers taking a step back or not, I think that's still a split at best, right? Like they just hate each other, and that game can go either way. And we don't know what Cincinnati is going to look like, right? Like I think Cincinnati, they really should go offensive lineman in the draft. They should take the Sewell from Oregon, but I don't know how hard it's going to be for them to pass up bringing Chase in and reuniting Burrow and Chase.
So earlier this week, I joined a Cincinnati group just because, I like Burrow. Like I said, I talked about in the group, his dad was the defensive coordinator for a long time at my college. I watched him play through high school, stuff like that. So I follow Burrow around a little bit. And there was a lot of chatter about taking Chase. I said, you guys should take a lineman, protect Burrow. It doesn't matter if you have Chase, if Burrow's getting smeared every play like he was last year. And I got promptly kicked out of the group for saying I was a Browns fan. But that being said, there was a lot of chatter about Jamar Chase for just, they had the chemistry in college. I get it. But they need to take linemen. They need to protect Burrow. It's not going to matter if your quarterback's on his back every play. So their team, I'd say is securely 2 years away. Draft linemen, if it means, the only reason why I see they take Chase is because they want to make a splash, and their coach, whose name I can't think of at the moment, has only won like 19% of his games over the first 2 seasons. So you're trying to make a splash, you're trying to get people excited. That's the only reason why you take Chase. But the smart play is, the guy from Oregon.
Yeah.
So I say under for the Bengals. 9, that's going to be hard. I don't see the Steelers. I see them at 8-8, honestly, if I'm being honest about the Steelers. I think that's fair. It's going to be Ravens-Browns. It's going to be a shootout. It's going to come down to 1 or 2 plays. Whoever gets the better of the 2 games, Ravens-Browns, that team's going to win 11-12. The other team's going to win 10-11. So that's what we're going to
split the season.
I think so. I think we, especially if like fans are back in the stadiums, I see us losing in Baltimore and us beating them in Cleveland. So I think we go. The thing I'm not sure is if I want to predict the season sweep against the Steelers or not. We definitely at least split with them. I don't know if I see us sweeping them just because they're Pittsburgh, and it, like you said, teams in the division build themselves to beat the best teams in the division, and that's just how it is. So,
I think the Steelers' downfall though is their line. Their line is suspect this year, and Ben Roethlisberger is old, and he looked old last year. And I don't buy into their receiving core. Who's their running back? They got a lot of questions for me going into the season. Now, Tomlin's never had a losing season. All good things come to an end, though. Could happen this year.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I think if they do get to 9 wins, that's just a credit to Tomlinson because their defense lost a lot. Now, of course, one really good draft can address a lot of these issues. This is all pre-draft, but their defense lost a lot. Their offensive line lost a lot. Juju's not a true number 1 receiver. Maybe Claypool doesn't seem to be ready to take us. He doesn't. I don't know. Maybe he takes a step forward, but
Did
Claypool
he just get in a fight? Did he just get in a fight?
Yeah, and that's why I'm trying not to talk about maturity, but there seems to be a couple issues there. And plus, Claypool, his skill set doesn't necessarily match Ben's skill set right now. So I don't know how much, because last year when Big Ben was playing and Claypool was in, Claypool had like one good game, and then he caught like 4 passes over the next 5 games or something like that. So I mean, Claypool and Ben, their skill sets don't match each other. So yeah, they're just, like I said, if Tomlinson gets them to 9 wins, that is a tip of the cap to Tomlinson, because that's going to take some work this year.
You brought up fans briefly. Do you think that lack of fans in the stadiums had anything to do with, I guess this is for both of you guys, with teams' ability to pull out that tough game in the past few minutes with fan participation and all of that? Or if even fans will be in the stadiums this year?
I think it depends on the team, right? Because I
say that because the Steelers fans travel very well, and I think it does help a team like them.
Right, like it does depend on the team, because like a team like the Ravens or the Browns, the Titans, running game travels wherever you go, right? The fan noise affects shotgun and passing more than it does a solid running game. Do I think maybe it helps when you don't have to go into like when we played a tight game against the Giants and not having to go to a silent count because there's no fans there? Does that help? Of course it does. But at the same time, like I said, I think a good running game. I think maybe the Steelers won a couple more games last year than they would have because they didn't have a running game, so they were relying on a shotgun pass game. Which when you're on the road, like I think the biggest change you're going to see, like if fans are back, is somewhere like the Silverdome, Seattle, where they refer to the home crowd as like a big thing that they definitely lost last year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for energy, right? And when you're playing at the NFL level, it's an even playing field across the board, pretty much, right? Like these are professional athletes, but when you have that home crowd like screaming behind you, like there's just an energy level that takes it to another notch. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, right? Like you mentioned Seattle 12 man, like they were pulling out shit with the 12 man that all the time, like it didn't matter, right? Green Bay, another place. New Orleans gets super loud. There's a lot to be said for that. But as far as whether or not they're going to be allowed in, that's a tough call, man. It's a really, really tough call. I don't know if they're going to allow full capacity. I know they will in Florida because Florida doesn't give a fuck. But other states, I don't know. Like Texas will probably let people, but it's still up in the air as far as how many fans they're going to let in the stadium, as far as I know.
Well, I have a question for you. Do you think so? Yeah, like you just touched on, like Florida, we don't give a shit. We'll standing room only, tailgating, whatever. We don't care. Do you think the NFL should impose some? Because I think they kind of did last year when Florida was saying we're going to open up, and the NFL was still like, no, you're not going to have more than, because we don't want NFL to be linked to super spreader events, right? Do you think it would be fair for the NFL to say, listen, I don't care what your state's saying, you can't have more than half capacity or 25,000 fans or whatever the case might like? Do you think that would, in the name of competitive balance? Because it's completely one thing if Pittsburgh can't fill their stadium because Pennsylvania says, no, we're not doing that yet. And then you go to the Superdome and they're like, fuck it, fill the whole thing, right? So do you think that makes sense? And I'm not basing
I do.
I mean, they should.
Yeah.
They absolutely should. I know the UFC has an event in Florida coming up, I think, this weekend. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how their process is, as far as getting people in that stand. And they're expected to go full capacity. which is insane if you ask me. But
Well, I know, because the WWE is here in Orlando, their training center where they've been doing Raw and all that, and there they've had like the screens where you can see like people are basically watching on TVs kind of, and it shows them in the audience. But then they had WrestleMania in Tampa, and I'm pretty like, at least from the videos I don't watch enough to know, but from the videos I've seen on YouTube, it looks like they have like a fairly full audience. So, but of course I'm seeing it from someone's cell phone, so it's hard to see like what it looks like, but so it'll definitely be interesting. And I do think for the name of competitive balance, they should like come out with some sort of listen, like unless every state goes full capacity, then we're going to cap it.
Definitely a conversation worth having. I called the salesperson who I bought my season tickets from for the Giants, and I asked them plainly, like, what do we expect? Because every year, April 1st, I get my bill to pay for my season tickets. And they sent an email saying the bill was coming, but never sent the bill. So I said, what's going on with tickets this year? How's this going to be handled? First of all, we got a 17 game schedule, which is different than it's ever been. So would that mean an additional cost per ticket or whatever? Secondly, what is the governor's office saying? What is the NFL saying? What is the CDC saying? Like, what are you relying on to determine how much money I'm supposed to pay for tickets? And what's capacity supposed to be like? Are we supposed to get tickets for every other game or every third game? How's that going to look? And they said that they're really following what the what is the name of it? The baseball. They're following what the MLB is doing right now in terms of how they're filling stadiums, what they're doing from state to state to make sure competitive balance is in place. But they're largely dependent on what the governor says before they can even look at anything else, because the governor determines whether or not they're going to allow fans to participate. And then they go from there. So it starts with the politicians, of course, and then it moves to CDC guidelines, and then it moves to NFL for competitive balance, etc. But I, for one, think that, like you started off saying, with certain teams, I think it matters more. Like you said, with the running game is going to travel well anyway. But sometimes you need a solid snap count in certain stadiums or whatever. But I'll be honest with you, as a person who will be fully vaccinated by the time the NFL season starts, I'm looking forward to going to a game. Last year, you couldn't even get me to consider going to a game. This year, oh, I want to go to a game. I just don't know what that's going to look like.
Well, we still have to do that. The Pittsburgh Browns game. We were going to do that last year, and then obviously that got.
And we're doing that.
Tossed to the side. Yeah. Well, so my girlfriend is a huge Green Bay fan. So we're probably doing. I think she's going to make me go.
Every relationship has its drawbacks. So.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, cheese is nice, but not when you wear it on your head. But yeah, so
I want that
like
in
it.
the intro.
I guess I don't know.
I want that in the intro. Cheese is nice, but not when you wear it on your head.
I'd like to remain I like this one, so I'd like to remain in a relationship. So that will not be.
Tread lightly.
Yeah, we're gonna tread lightly on that one. And the funny thing is, she's real into. She's almost like Atticus levels of fanatical about the Green. Like, she's got a Green Bay tattoo here. She's got a Wisconsin tattoo here.
Oh wow.
She's almost Atticus levels of fanatical. So like I've already kind of like jokingly trash talked about that game. I honestly kind of hope the Browns take the L, because she might not talk to me for like 2 weeks if the Browns win that game. So that's where we're at with that one. But I didn't say that out loud. Anyway, let's do the East. I kind of want to get to the East because your guys' those are your guys' team. What are the projected win totals for the East this year?
Let's start with Washington. Washington's at 8. I think that's low.
Yeah.
I think that's low, right? I think their defense wins 8 games, to be honest. I don't.
They're going to win 6 against the rest of the East, right? So they only have to pull out.
They're not going to sweep the East, man.
Jesus, Chris.
I don't even know the last time that a team swept.
I think Kelly was right. You're using some kind of narcotics, bro.
I mean, if the Browns can sweep the East.
Did they?
Last year they did.
They didn't play each team twice, though.
Did we win every game against the East we played?
Doesn't matter. You didn't play them twice.
Is that not what a sweep is?
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway, continue.
I mean, Gorky is sold on the Redskins being the cream of the crop in the East. I'm not so sure. I don't think it's a given. Right? Like, I don't think it's a given at all. I think that they made some nice signings. Curtis Samuel's a nice addition. I'm not a believer in Fitzmagic to lead a team to the playoffs, not at this stage in his career. You know, if it was 2015 or 2014 Fitzpatrick, maybe it's a different story. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, but I don't know how many games they win. Their win total depends on their defense and their ability to shut teams down. You know, and can they take another step? So, you know, 8 wins, I think 9 or 10. You know, I don't think it's an egregious, but I'll take the over.
Yeah, I go with the over 2. I know I was just joking about them sweeping the East. Honestly, I think the Giants and the Cowboys have enough offensive firepower to at least take one game from them. So I could see 4-2 for them in the division. Sorry, Mike. But because right now I look at the Redskins and I think the Redskins are kind of flip-flopped with the Giants. They have a good defense with a passable, you know, average to slightly better than average offense. And I think it's the opposite for the Giants, who they're gearing up for a great offense and have a average to, you know, slightly better than average defense. That being said, I think defense just helps out a little bit more. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to say over just because I'd like to see whatever team wins that division actually have a winning record. So I feel good about them in the playoffs. So yeah, I could see them getting to 9, maybe 10 wins, depending on how the chips fall in a couple games.
I don't know. I think that their defense will be the reason why they win games more than their offense, for sure. I don't think their defense alone is going to win them 6 games. I think if you had to make a choice between having your if you're up 1 and you're Washington and you want your offense on the field to keep a drive going, or your defense on the field to shut them down so that you could win the game, you'd want their defense on the field before their offense, because that's when Fitzpatrick will throw a pick and break your fucking heart. That's who he is. I like Fitzpatrick. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a hell of a guy. And I'm talking more of a person in his competitive spirit more than his ability to close out a game. So I think that Washington, and so they're projected to get 8 wins. I think 8 might be a little low. Maybe they'll get 9. Maybe. But that really depends on 2 things. How healthy their defense stays and which Ryan Fitzpatrick shows up for the party. That's what it depends on.
Who does the East play this year outside of the East? Like, what divisions are you guys against?
I don't even remember, to be honest with you. Who is it, Mike?
I want to say it's the AFC
take a look.
West. I want to say it's the West.
It's the West.
I want to say that.
That's a tough division. That's a real tough division. But I tell you what, and if we're comparing apples to apples in terms of 2 teams in the NFC East who have 2 good defenses, if you look at what happened in 2020, the New York Giants defense has improved just as much as Washington's defense has improved. And guess who swept who in 2020? I'll let you guys say it. I won't say it.
Who swept who when?
This past season.
I remember the Browns beat the Giants.
Oh, God, here we go. I got to get that nausea medication.
I think the Giants swept the Redskins.
Did they really? Honestly,
I
didn't
swept the
realize
Redskins. So,
well, what were those games like? I assume they were tight games though. Like, I don't remember.
They were tight games. It was, listen, between the 2 games, we might have won by a total of 6 points. But what I'm saying is, so what's the difference between those 2 teams? Let's call the defenses close to even. Offensively, you got to give the nod to the New York Giants. You just have to. But we're talking about whether or not they'll reach 8 wins in that season. As much as I think they could go 9, I'm gonna err on the side of caution and say, yeah, they're probably right at 8-8.
See, I think just as the outside, I think their defense is a little bit. If you gave me the choice between the Giants defense as is right now today versus their defense as is right now today, I think Washington's the better defense. I'm not saying it's leaps and bounds different, but I do think they're a play or two better right now.
Their line for sure. Secondary, no chance. Landon Collins can't stick nothing. We love Landon Collins in Washington. I loved him when he was a New York Giant, but he's great at stopping and run. But you get some good tight ends and ask Landon Collins to play man on a tight end, you're gonna get the first down every time against him. He's terrible in pass coverage.
All right, so I think we're 8 to 9 wins is kind of where we have as a group. We kind of have the Redskins or the football team as it was. Let's tackle the Cowboys and then we'll get to your guys' team. So the Cowboys, what's their over under?
9.5.
Yeah, I'm taking the under. I don't think they've done enough for their defense because they had a good offense last year. That's obviously coming back. But even before Dak went out, they were what 1-4, 1-5, 2-5, whatever it was. Like, I think they're gonna have the same problems last year. They're gonna put up 500, but they're a passing team that's gonna put up 500-600 yards of offense. But then their defense is gonna turn right around and give up 300 yards on the ground. So I don't think
I
they
gotta
get to
step
9.
out for 1 second, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, you're fine. I don't think they get to 9. I think I see them 6-7. I don't think they improve much over. McCarthy has yet to prove to me that he can win in today's NFL without an all-star, a all-time great quarterback. So I don't think I think that's where we're going to see the slide. I think 6-7 is a good target for them.
So I think that the books makers know what they're doing. So when they throw in that half game, I think that means a lot, right? Like, there's a lot of Cowboy fans in this country, right? And how many of them are degenerate gamblers? Probably a good number of them. So how many of them are going to take the over? Probably most of them, right? But I think 9 wins, probably. I see not, but they could very well lose every one of their schedule's rough this year too. Right. Aside from playing the AFC West, they're playing Tampa Bay. Who else they got? They got New Orleans. They got Kansas City, New England. So they got some tough games on the schedule.
Are those all road games?
It's a road game. It's at Tampa, at Kansas City, at New England, at New Orleans.
And let's be honest, if they won one of those games, you consider that good, right?
Yeah.
So to get to 9 wins, that means they would have to sweep. They'd have to sweep the NFC East. Or I'm sorry, the AFC West. Sorry. Well, yeah, they'd have to basically win all the NFC East games. So that's 6 wins and win 3. Like, out of the NFC West and those games you just mentioned, they'd have to win 4 of those to get to 10. Let's
play it like this, right? Like, if with those 4 games at KC, at Tampa Bay, at New Orleans, at New England,
loss.
Let's say 2-2 at best, right? At best, 2-2. I think they split the division. I think it's 3-3 across the board, right? So now they're at 5-5 with 10 games in. The other set. Ooh, there's an extra game this year too. I totally forgot about that.
Who's their extra game? We don't know yet.
I don't know who it is.
Okay, but still. So there's 7 games left, right? They need to win 4 out of the last 7. And so they'd have the West to play. They'd have all the West teams. They're not going wherever they
got
travel.
The Chargers, the Raiders, and Denver.
Okay, so possibly
NKC.
Denver, possibly the Chargers. The Raiders are hit and miss. I mean, that's not a give me. So we'll give them the Chargers. We'll give them the Broncos, right? The Raiders, depending on which Raiders team shows up, that's 3. So we're at 8 wins. Assuming
I don't know that you can give them the Chargers either.
I don't know if you can.
Okay, so that's
Chargers have a defense. Not only do the Chargers have a defense, they got a stud at quarterback.
So Atticus, I said Loy said somewhere around 9. I said 6 to 7. Right now we're at 7 wins, and that's that's saying they beat the Raiders and the Broncos. I don't see him going to Seattle and winning, right? Like I don't see him going to San Francisco and winning. I don't see him going Arizona. Like who do they beat in the AFC West?
Maybe Denver.
That's the NFC West you just named.
That's
off.
the NFC West. Yeah.
Denver, the Broncos.
No, Chris. They're Seattle, Arizona. That's NFC.
Or NFC. I'm sorry, I keep saying AFC. That's my fault. NFC West. Oh, they're playing the AFC. I'm sorry. I'm completely basing my argument off of the wrong thing. My fault. Still, like, do they go to Mile High and win?
That's the only way I can. The only team in the AFC West I see them with a good chance of winning. I don't think that the Chargers are a pushover. I know they're not going to beat. I shouldn't say I know because any given Sunday, right? But who really thinks they're going to beat Kansas City? Oakland, like you said, is the only real toss-up. I don't know. Maybe Oakland. Perhaps
okay, so
Denver.
Let's just do best case scenarios. Like we said, they split the East, so that's 3 wins. They beat Oakland. We'll just give it to them for the sake of argument. We give it to them, so that's 4 wins. Broncos is 5 wins. They're not winning at New Orleans. They're not winning at Tampa Bay. Where else did you say they were going, Mike?
You got to give them an upset.
So they play Atlanta. They play Carolina. They play Denver. They play the Raiders. They play Arizona, all at home.
Okay, so they can definitely beat Carolina. They can definitely beat Atlanta. So that's 2, 5. So that's 7. Because maybe they upset the Patriots. That's that's probably the most vulnerable team.
Is that an upset though anymore?
At New England, yeah, I'd still say that's an upset.
It's in New England.
I don't know.
They have because New England does it like New England more than any team last year. I will say this for them: had a lot of players skip out because of COVID, so they're going to have a much better defense than they did last year. So yeah, I'd still say at New England, like on a neutral field, it's a toss-up. But at New England, that's an upset, mild upset, but it's still an upset in my book.
I think they struggle to get to 9, regardless.
8-8.
8-8, 7-9, or 8-9.
Be 8-9.
You know, they're the exact opposite of Washington because if they do win, it'll be because of their offensive output. It won't be because of their defense. So I could see them getting to 9 because of some miraculous shit that sometimes happens with the Dallas Cowboys. You're like, how the fuck did he do that? So I'm gonna say 8-8, maybe 9.
Their defense is too easy to be run on. Like that's the thing. Like they like Odell Beckham ran for 150 yards against them. Like ran.
It makes no sense to me whatsoever because they have 2 stud linebackers. It makes no sense whatsoever how they could run against the Cowboys the way that they did. Right. Like, I don't think their line's that bad. They got some studs. They got some big boys up there up front, and then they have 2 stud linebackers, 2.5, if you want to call it, count Sean Lee for 5 or 6 games.
Can we count them studs though? Because they were I know the Browns ran for 300 yards against them. They gave up 200 plus yards on the ground to 4 different teams last year.
He's using the Browns fair, and I can't even. I'm about to say this right. Like the Browns, how many times did the Browns run for 300 yards in a game last season?
Right, but
you know what I mean. Like they ran on everybody.
But it wasn't just the Browns running on them. It was everyone was running on them. So we can say they have studs all we want, but clearly the performance on the field says otherwise. Like Sean Lee got injured. I know that.
He's injured.
Yeah, he's injured. Did he get released? I don't even think he's on.
No, he's not released.
He's injured right now.
He woke up this morning and anyway, so Sean Lee's always injured. Something happened to Van Der Esch. I think he got injured, but he took a step
Van Der Esch got injured. Jalen Smith got injured. So they had some problems. And their secondary's horrible.
I mean, the only thing I could see is if somehow their line returns to 2018 form and Zeke bounces way back. That if Zeke rebounds and they can control the ball more, and their offense can be a little bit more balanced. Because offensive firepower is great, but it doesn't matter if you score in 20 seconds if your defense then gives up, you know, a 75-yard drive where half of it, you know, the majority of it's running yards. You're not going to get your offense on the field enough. So if Zeke can rebound, you know, and ever since he signed his extension, I don't know if he just said, screw it, I don't care anymore, but he's lost his explosiveness as far as I'm concerned ever since he signed his extension. But if he can rebound, their line can get back into form, and maybe some of their linebackers get healthy. Sure, 9 wins. But as of right now, the team, as we saw it last year, and I can't think of anything they've done to make me think they have an incredibly different defense than they had last year. 7 wins, 8 wins. That's where I see them. They have the offensive firepower where, yeah, they're going to come across a team that's got a suspect defense and they're going to blow them out because they have that type of offensive firepower. But they're going to come up against a Washington, a New York. They're not going to – they don't have enough of a defense to keep pace with a team that's got a better – like slightly better than average is all you need to, like, beat them, because as long as you have a decent offense. And plus, the Giants are going to get Saquon back, so the Giants are going to run all over them. The Redskins.
Let's let Saquon be healthy.
Mm.
You know,
I hope he is. I like Saquon. I like Barkley.
I'm in a quandary there. I really hope he's healthy, and I really don't hope he's healthy. Right? Like,
we need more running backs to draft in fantasy.
I mean, he's a PSU alum. He's phenomenal to watch. You know, I've seen him live a couple times up at Beaver Stadium. He's a specimen, you know, like shit he did on the field, like I've never seen before. Right. And that's like watching Barry Sanders too. Like his ability to go from 0 to 60 cutting on a dime is insane. It's phenomenal to watch. And it's also scary for everybody in the division, but I'd still like to see him healthy, you know, just not twice a year.
So let's go to the Giants. What's the Giants' projected total?
Well, they got the Giants and the Eagles both at 7, right? And I had to think about this one for a minute. Like 7-10 is the over/under. That's their record. Like would be 7-10 because they're playing 17 games, right? So we'll start with the Giants. Like I'm taking the over. You know, I'm on record of already saying that I think they're the sleeper team in the division. I think there's a lot of people sleeping on the Giants. You know, I don't their defense was quietly one of the top defenses last year, and I think they got better. You know, their offense, we've already talked about Saquon coming back. Kenny Galladay may or may not be a true number 1, but he's certainly a 1A. And you compare him with, you know, you still got Shepard, you still have Slayton. I'm not sold on Ingram. But, you know, you have weapons there, you know, and you put Saquon in the mix and Dimes Dimes is Andy Dalton 2.0 without the red hair, right? Like Dalton won a lot of games in Cincinnati, man. It's nothing to be ashamed of, you know, but he's going to throw an untimely pick. He's going to drop the ball untimely. He's going to trip on the 20-yard line, whatever it might be, you know. Like there's something's going to happen, but like, does that make him a super bad quarterback? No, not at all. You know, I think he's a quality quarterback, and you know, we've never seen him with a line in front of him, a good line that's healthy. Will we see that this year? I don't know. I'm not sold on the Giants' offensive line yet, but I do know that they have built the team in this offseason, and they're going to go into the draft and continue to build a team that it's in Danny's hands, you know, and if Danny can perform, I think 7 is egregiously low.
I'll speak real quick, and then we'll let Atticus go in on his Giants. Yeah, I'm on the record saying like they obviously they're kind of going the Baker Mayfield method, right? They're like loading up the offense, and they're saying, hey, look, you take this Ferrari for a run. If you crash it into a tree by Thanksgiving, you're done. Like, so this team is going to go as far as Danny Dimes can carry him. I don't agree with comparing him to Andy Dalton. I think he's a Eli Manning clone, is what I honestly think, down to the facial expressions. You know, he's gonna turn the ball over. He's gonna do something crazy. He's gonna have a run. You're gonna be like, oh my God, that guy's a gazelle, and then he's gonna trip over the 20-yard line. that play encapsulates what I think of Danny Dimes in a nutshell. But I also agree. If Danny Dimes can give us, can be like 80% of his potential, this team's going to win 9-10 games easy. It's kind of weird because now 9 games is that over? That would be over 500, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
9 and 8.
9 and 8. Yeah. So this team has the potential. But I agree with you. A sleeper team in the division. I could see them surprising some people. I think their defense is under the radar. They really buy into Joe Judge. He's got something building there. If not this year, I think next year they're definitely going to be the force in the division, assuming like the drafts and the off seasons go well. But yeah, this year is make or break for Danny Dimes, and I think they go as far as he can take them. And if he can give them 80% of his ultimate potential, I think they win 9-10 games.
All right, allow me to bloviate for a minute here. So free agency is when you fill the pieces that you need. And I think, say what you want about Dave Gettleman, he had a pretty good free agency. Starting off with his pickup of John Ross, I was like, what the fuck are we picking up John Ross for? What is this guy really going to do? But it all made sense once I looked at the complete picture of free agent signings that he made during this season. He got a guy who can stretch the field. I agree with you 100% about Evan Ingram. I was the first one to say, get him out of here. I'm tired of the guy. He dropped the passes. I don't know if you knew this. Here's a fun fact for you. The New York Giants receivers were 7th among all teams whose players dropped the most passes in game-winning situations. 7th. That's a pretty big number for you to. So if you look at a couple of things that you can do to fix that number there, you can turn, let's say, 8 of those losses into 4 wins and 4 losses. You got an entirely different team. So what did he do? He brought in John Ross, who'll stretch the field and open up a lot of stuff underneath for crossing routes or whatever the case may be. Saquon Barkley's coming back healthy. I really like Saquon Barkley, but I'm also of the mindset that your running back alone is not going to do it for you, which brings me into Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes. If Danny Dimes can have the same type of season that he had when he was a rookie, minus some of the fumbles that he had, he's not a, well, I can see why you would say Andy Dalton 2.0, but he really isn't. He's a couple of steps above a Danny of a Andy Dalton type of quarterback. And Andy Dalton's not a bad quarterback. He really isn't. He just, for whatever reason, call it Marvin Lewis or whatever it was, he couldn't get it done in Cincinnati. He also didn't look bad when he was with Dallas, and that's probably why he got the nod to become Chicago's starting quarterback this year. But when you look at the receiving core on the Giants, and you got Slayton, you got Shepard. Shepard's always consistent. I really like. I think he's a little underrated because he's not fast, but you can depend on him if you need to get a catch in the last few minutes of a game, he will deliver that catch for you. So Golladay, if he can stay healthy, and we don't know, I think he's a surefire number 1 receiver. So when you got Slayton, you've got Shepard, Ingram can be good, but in spurts. But you bring in a Kyle Rudolph, who is a massive target in the end zone, in the red zone. It just opens up so many different opportunities, especially when you got a healthy Saquon Barkley. So offensively, if Daniel Jones can be coached up to fix a couple of the little wrinkles, and yes, he will stumble at the 20 on an 80-yard run with nobody in front of him. Every quarterback's going to do some head-scratching shit. I still think when you look at the NFC East, the most complete team in the East right now is probably your New York Giants. And if we're talking about looking at the schedule and the strength of our opposition in the schedule, I don't know. I see 9 wins for the Giants, maybe 10. The question is how healthy they're going to be playing these games. And the first 4 weeks of the season is going to tell you which Daniel Jones has come into the 2021 season. He's the X factor. It ain't the defense. I'm very happy with what's happened on the defense. The offensive line, while I've had some questions, I'm not really too concerned with the offensive lines because our backups could have been starters on some offensive lines last year. That's how much they've improved. What's his name? Nate Solder is actually coming back this year, which I think he was extremely overpaid and underproduced. But he would be a good guard, not a left tackle. And he's got the experience. So I think that there's some pieces that are in place that's going to make the Giants a team. I think that there's nobody who has claimed this division. This year, the Giants are the team that's best poised to be able to do that in the NFC East. So I'm going to say 9, maybe 10 wins.
This is splitting hairs, but just a comment you mentioned, you brought up Gettleman. The only move I would criticize, and again, this isn't necessarily a knock against the talent of the player. I just think, kind of like the injury history and stuff like that. I think he overpaid a little bit for Galladay. Other than that, but that's just splitting hairs. If that's what it took to get him there, that's what it took to get him there. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe, yeah, like that's splitting hairs. But I'm pretty hard on Gettleman generally. But I think he did a good offseason.
If the Giants win 10 or 11 games, and Galladay has an 1,100-yard season, 80 or more catches, was he overpaid?
And plays in every game? No. That's what you're bringing him to do. You're paying for that possible potential. I just feel like based on it's. I always look at players like stocks. You can't. You got to look more backwards than forwards a lot of times because you can't predict the future. So that like based on what it is, I think he got paid a little bit more than he should have. But yeah, if he was in that kind of at the end of the day, if you win the Super Bowl, I don't care how much you overplayed a player because it was worth it, right? So. Yeah, I think just as we stand today, yes, he overpaid him a little bit. If he has that kind of season, if he emerges as a true number one and catches, 8 touchdowns, 1,100 yards, like no drops, worth it. So that brings us to America's team, the Philadelphia Eagles.
It is the birthplace of America. So, like, if we're going to be accurate in naming somebody America's team, it should be Philadelphia.
Right. There you go. Okay.
I mean, with the way I see their season going, that is what Mike Loy has to hang his hat on. So, Atticus, we'll start with you. Well, first of all, what's the what's 7. The over? You said 7, right?
7.
Yeah, I got some thoughts on that. Atticus, we'll go to you first. We'll get to Mike last.
So. Philadelphia is really hard to figure out for me this year. I don't have a clue of what their offensive scheme is going to be because I don't know anything about their head coach. I do know that Philadelphia has, in the most recent years, found a way to have players who were baggers at the local Krogers come in and play like they should have been at least picked up in the second round. I don't know how they've done that, but they've done that pretty consistently. With that being said, if you ask me at the end of the season, not at the end of the season, probably 2 months ago when everything was just a complete shit show in Philadelphia, how many games will they win next year? I would have said 4 games, right? If you ask me now, I think 7 is probably a pretty good number because I think that, and this is based on players and desire to win. There's nothing that I can look in the rearview mirror on with a lot of these people and say, this is why they'll get there. I mean, they had a lot of injuries, so that's one thing that you can say. You got a lot of players who really didn't get to fulfill their potential because obviously they were on injured reserve. You got Jalen Hurts, who wants to show everybody that he is the guy and should have been the guy. And then you got a coach who's going to bring in a brand new philosophy. And if the players buy into what he's saying and preaching and doesn't take them out for ice cream every week like Peterson did, they might win some games. So I think 7 is probably a good number, particularly when you're talking about they only got to win. They only got to split their division to win 3 of those games. Who do they have outside of the AFC West that they're going to be playing? And I think that even with the turbulence that's been going on and the high level of dysfunction in Philly, I still think they're a better team than Denver. So you got maybe 4 wins there. They only got to win 3 more. I think they could probably do it.
So I think 7 is doable because we have the extra game this year. I'm kind of inclined to go more about 5 to 6, and my reasoning is there's just like, fair or not, there's like kind of like a bad mojo around this team right now. There just seems to be a lot of like what the hell happened kind of vibe to it. And I could see them starting out kind of like Dallas, where they just seem to be sleepwalking and shell shocked for the first 6-7 games, that maybe they lose a couple they shouldn't, or they're in a couple that they just can't close the deal on, that kind of thing. And then maybe toward the middle of the year, there's kind of like a turn. They have that turn the corner game, and then they're much more competitive in the second half. But by that point, it's a little too late to start racking up the wins. So I'm not saying they're going to be like blown out a whole lot or anything like that. There just seems to be a lot of like, because they still have to figure out the Zach Ertz situation. There's still some like unfinished business, so to speak, with like the offseason to go on with them. And honestly, I don't know what direction they're going in, which doesn't help. Like you said, there's just too many question marks for me to say, yeah, they're going to be able to hit the ground running. So I think it's going to take 5-6 games for them to kind of figure out what's working and what's not. And by that time, we're already going to be too far into the season for them to get to 7-8 wins. So 7, just because there's the extra game this year, but realistically, I see 5 to 6. It's just going to be a rebuilding year. They bottomed out. It's going to, 2 years for them to really kind of get back into the swing of things. It happens to everybody. It's just the Eagles' turn.
Question for you on that. Do you think if they're at, let's say, 5-10, right, going into week 16, week 17, with factor in the bye week, do you think they try to win or they play for a draft pick in those last 2 games? So you know what they did in 2020,
right? I think it depends on for them. I feel like the Eagles as a franchise are proud enough where they'll play for the win. I think unless
they didn't do that last year though.
Well, okay, but they also playing for pride can also mean screwing your competition. So I'm willing to go for that as well. I think assuming like everything else is kind of like if the Giants are sewn up and whatever, if there's no like, well, we can affect the outcome of this, then yeah, I think they go for the win because I see that kind of pride. At the same time, there were a lot of shenanigans going on last year at the Eagles that I don't think we'll ever get a straight answer to exactly what anybody was thinking. So yeah, last year I think was an aberration more than like who the Eagles are as a franchise. All right, Lloyd, let's hear it. Let's hear any possible positives you could have about the Eagles this year. Let's go.
Couple things. One, I don't think the NFC East, like last year, it was like, ooh, we're going to have a 7-9 team in from the East. Everybody fucking had a conniption about that. I don't see that this year, right? I think somebody wins 10, 11, maybe even 12 games. One of these teams is going to come out and win some more games than expected to. I just think the quality of Washington and I almost said New Jersey, and the New York Giants is
same thing.
I think the Cowboys still have a lot of question marks, and I think the Eagles have a lot of question marks, to Atticus' point, right? Like, whatever they did in the last game of last year is an aberration of what was going on the entire season. And I think that, Peterson just said, fuck you and fuck your team is what I think happened, and is like, if you're not going to fire me, you will now. And that's what I think happened. A couple weeks ago, somebody posted a post on the page that said the Eagles got an F for the free agency. That was pre-Eric Wilson, pre-Harris, and pre-Jordan Howard, right? I think those are 3 quality free agent signings late in the game. They're bringing in a stud linebacker, which fills a fucking dire need for the Eagles. They're bringing in a secondary, also fills a dire need for the Eagles. And they're bringing in a running back that complements Miles Sanders really well, right? Now you go to Jalen Hurts.
And Miles Sanders is underrated. He's a very good running back. Yeah.
Now you bring in Hurts. And I think Hurts fits that offense from what I've seen Indianapolis play better than Carson Wentz did, right? But I'm not sold on Hurts. Like, are we going to get Alabama Hurts, or are we going to get Oklahoma Hurts? Right? The kid from Oklahoma was in the stratosphere with Kyler Murray, with Patrick Mahomes, with Baker Mayfield. Like, he was in that stratosphere as far as quarterback production. So it's going to be interesting to see which guy they get. The second thing would be if in their line is formidable when healthy, right? They got 4 guys that didn't play last year coming back to their offensive line. Now, will those 4 stay healthy? I hope the change of a strength and conditioning fucking team for the Eagles brings big dividends, because that's been their Achilles heel for the last 4 or 5 years. They can't stay healthy. They haven't had a healthy starting 22 in probably 5 years. If they can reduce some of that injury prone, 7 wins is absolutely doable. Absolutely doable. 7 wins is 7-10, right? But I'm stuck. I mean, I'm in a quandary, right? Because you can't, if you go on history, they're not going to fix any of that, right? If you go on history, they're going to draft somebody at the end of this month that they probably shouldn't draft. I want J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. I think the kid's a stud. I'd like to see another linebacker in there too before they go wide receiver. But I got a feeling they might take that kid out of Minnesota, who's not a bad receiver. Bozeman's not a bad receiver coming out of Minnesota. Their receiving core is suspect. They need to. That's I think is their biggest question mark right now going into it. Realistically, I don't see. I'd probably 6 to 8 wins, right? Realistically, ball bounces the right way. Who knows? I mean, you could say that really about any team, but like if I'm a betting person, if I'm a degenerate gambler, I am staying away from the 7 with the Eagles because it's way too close to call. I mean, they could very well win 4 games. Could very well happen. But they're playing the NFC East, right? And like I give going into a season, unless we were playing the Giants from 2-3 years ago, like it's a split. It's 3-3, right? The Giants were really bad for like 4 or 5 years. So like I always counted that as a sweep. I just did. I can't do that anymore. But for the rest of the division, it's a split. So there you're 3-3. They got Carolina. They got Denver. So now we're at 5, right? Already we're at 5 wins. I think they can beat both of those teams. Then they got Detroit, right? They should be able to beat Detroit. So now we're at 6 wins, and then who else they got?
You play
Golden Saints. We don't know what they're going to do. 49ers, are they going to be healthy? And they got the Jets. That 17th game bonus, they got the Jets, who could or could not be another team that turns the corner. But, how many games did they win last year? 2? How many more games are they going to win this year? I don't know. I don't see them winning that many more games. So it could – I think I'm already up to 7, just looking at the schedule. So I'm staying away from it. I'll go with 7-10.
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing is, there's always going to be unders. I just, and it's nothing against the Eagles. I feel like there's too many question marks. I think I'll even say, I think it's in their best interest to just get another high pick, solidify some things, see how Hurts does this year, have another high pick for a quarterback next year if you need it, or a lineman, whatever way you need to go. I just think to push for more than that with this team just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm not for tanking the NFL because I know it's different than the NBA, but it just doesn't seem like if they won 8-9 games, I'd be genuinely surprised. In a good way. I feel good.
I'd be surprised. Don't get me wrong, right? But I could just looking at the schedule and who their competition is, I could see 7 wins, which is why I'd stay way away from this line.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think you got a group of guys or fans, I should say, out in Carolina who've got their own podcast thing going on, and they're doing what we're doing, and they're looking at the Eagles and saying, yeah, we'll win that game against the Eagles the same way you said, yeah, we I can see us beating the Panthers. And do you think that there's enough reasons to support their belief that the Eagles is a W on their schedule the same way that you feel about them?
No.
No.
I mean, I think the podcast is going on. Absolutely. But
I don't know what you guys are talking about. We are the sports talk podcast.
Oh, we are. Carolina, like, who's their quarterback? They haven't named a quarterback yet.
It's going to be Darnold.
Should it be? I mean, when Atticus was on a sabbatical, we talked about this at length. Teddy Bridgewater is not a bad quarterback.
He's not, but you don't trade for Darnold to have him sit behind Bridgewater. You don't
They're
trade.
Also talking. There's a chance they take one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the draft.
Either way, you don't trade. Yeah, so even more proof that you don't go. You don't have Bridgewater draft a quarterback in the first 10 picks and give up more draft capital for Darnold to keep Bridgewater. That would be the stupid, like, I could do
give
stuff
up
like that.
Like, the draft capital.
What'd you say?
If you give up draft capital to go after Sam Darnold, why are you taking one of these quarterbacks then?
Well,
right?
They haven't.
Like,
we don't know that they are. Like, you're projecting. We don't know. If they do, I have no honest answer to that question. I don't know why you do that. Like, that would make as much sense as the Colts. Like I said, like, we watched the 49ers give up draft capital to presumably go after a quarterback in number 3, right? Like, you don't do that if you're happy with Jimmy Garoppolo. They didn't trade for Sam Darnold to then draft a quarterback. Why would you do that? Because
presumably Mac Jones too for that.
I think
that's a whole other thing.
I think Darnold is better than I've ever given him credit for. But my reason for saying that the Philadelphia Eagles will get 7 wins is because if I could use one word to describe the Philadelphia Eagles is grit. Those guys, listen, they're your lunch pail guys. They come out and they work hard and they play hard, particularly against the division. I mean, I've seen them lay some eggs out there, but for the most part, when you see the Eagles play, they are a gritty group of guys. And not for nothing, and I know I keep going back to this, I'm still slightly scorned behind that last game of the season. But the players wasn't happy with that shit that went on at all because they really wanted to show that they're the Philadelphia Eagles. They represent a city full of people who are gritty just like them. So when I say 7 wins, it's not because their talent level was better than who they played. It's because them some scrappy motherfuckers in Philadelphia. It's something about being signed in Philly where even if you had no grit and scrappiness before you were an Eagle, you got it when you signed that contract because that's just who they are.
Well, so to that point,
getting 7.
And to that point, right? Like, I think some of it comes back to leadership, and the majority of the locker room fully supports Jalen Hurts. It's a different level of leadership from the quarterback position. Now, those that were in the Carson Wentz camp, and this is just my speculation from reading, they're the old school, what's in the locker room stays in the locker room. I'm not going to speak badly about Wentz. Wentz was a great dude, whatever, right? Like, whatever happened in the locker room, we're going to keep it under wraps, but the majority of that team is fully supporting Jalen Hurts. And they did in that last game, which is why the players were pissed off. He wasn't having a good game by any stretch of the imagination. He was like 7 for 20, right? But he's electric.
He had 2 rushing touchdowns.
He had 2 rushing touchdowns.
The grit that I'm talking about.
And he could do some things that we haven't seen Wentz do. And like the team behind him supports that, right? Like, and I think that speaks volumes, right? Like I still need to see it with Jalen Hurts, right? Like, but the team believes it. So, I mean, maybe there's something there.
Can I just say this? And I know we're probably running over. I just want to say this real quick. And trust me, I'm no fan of the Philadelphia Eagles. However, Jalen Hurts, talk about a guy who was given a shit deal from the very beginning. Drafted number 2, right? drafted in the second round by the Philadelphia Eagles after they paid this guy. So what is he going to expect when he got there? And there's more reporting coming out now that Carson Wentz was not happy at all about the fact that this guy got picked and signed. And he was even less happy when he went out there and played well. Even in games where the Eagles did not win, it wasn't because of lack of effort from Jalen Hurts. It was because of a bunch of other things going on in the dysfunction and injuries with the Philadelphia Eagles. And Jalen Hurts showed up and soldiered through, regardless of how he felt. Forget about which version of him, which team he played for in college. He played overall. I'm going to give him a B for his performance, not just as the quarterback of that team in the absence of your captain, your franchise quarterback, but the effort he put forth with all the noise distractions. You got Carson Wentz over here heckling and shit, trying to turn teammates against him for being and he played well. You never saw him looking like he was not trying to win the game on the sideline. I think he did pretty well. And I think that, like you said, the players rallied around him more than they did Carson in the end because of what Carson was doing to create much unneeded distractions in the locker room of a team trying to win games.
It's almost Nick Foles-esque, right? Like, you like to say the Eagles got rid of the wrong quarterback.
I say that because I'll just be messing with y'all, though.
But
Carson
did
Wentz is
they?
definitely a better quarterback.
He's a better quarterback, but the team responded better to Foles.
Right.
They just did. So it's a big question mark for the Eagles, man. They are an enigma going into this NFL season.
Yeah.
I've touched on it in the past, and I'll just say it again. I think the biggest problem with Carson Wentz in Philadelphia was, for whatever reason, despite doing everything to act like he was, they never treated him like he was their quarterback. And I think that's all the friction you saw. Like, you have a guy that you're paying franchise quarterback money to that's looking over his shoulder at the backup, regardless of whether it's Foles, whether it's drafting Jalen Hurts in the second round. Like, they never treated him and I've even said, like, I think every team should take a flyer in the 6th round on a quarterback every year. But the thing is, when you have an entrenched guy, we'll just take the Browns and Baker Mayfield. When you have an entrenched guy, he's not threatened by Johnny 6th round. Jalen 2nd round, yeah, he's like, what are you doing? And now he's like, whether he's pressing, he's, whatever the case might be, he feels he's like constantly competing for his job. There comes a point where you have to let the quarterback know it's good, and they never seemed willing to do that for whatever the reason. And I think that was always a large part of it.
But that can go two ways, because Belichick did that to Brady starting back in 17 or something like that. And what did Brady do? He won an MVP and 2 Super Bowls. So Garoppolo came, right? Garoppolo
was like a 5th round pick, wasn't he?
Who?
Garoppolo? Wasn't he like?
I don't remember what round he was, but
he wasn't the first 2 though. I mean, that's the thing.
Right. Right.
And plus, like, but they'd also been doing that for a while, where they were drafted, but they would do that thing for a while. So I think Brady was more secure because it was a thing where they had drafted a quarterback.
Yes.
You get I'm playing
drafted in the 2nd round.
Oh, he was in the 2nd round. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and to this day, though, there's always a thing that Garoppolo was Belichick's guy, and he wanted to. So, I mean, just Kraft in a rare thing showed loyal to Brady. Like, that's a unique situation, because we're talking about, like, arguably, like, one of the best quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah.
Which Carson Wentz, no one's making that argument for him.
No.
Well, you use Aaron Rodgers as an example. They drafted Jordan Love in I believe the 2nd round. As the heir apparent.
End of the first round.
End of the first
round. I think there's also a difference when your quarterback's 37 versus in the middle of his first major contract.
But how did he respond? How did Aaron Rodgers respond?
Well, just because Green Bay is...
He wasn't happy about it. He was like, why are you drafting this dude?
Well, just because...
I'm still here.
But again, we're talking about arguably all-time great quarterbacks. We're talking about all-time great quarterbacks who are over 35. Like, there's a difference in situation, because by the same token, like, why the Steelers haven't drafted a quarterback yet, I don't understand. So it's either way. in the interest of time, I like this going through the wins, but I think we have another one more of these podcasts we'll do before the draft, so we can tackle the rest of the divisions. I think we got the two that we're going to talk the most about out this week. One last question I'd like to hit you guys with everything that's happened with the draft about 10, 11 days out now. Has any moves, and we'll just cover our own teams, has any moves made by your teams, whether it be signing, letting people go, et cetera, changed who you think they should go after in the draft? And I'm talking realistically, like Attica said, well, if we can get Lawrence, we go after Lawrence. But realistically, does it change who you think like the Giants will go after at 11 or the Eagles at 12?
Well, I don't like the fact that, but I understand it. We let Dalvin Tomlinson go, but we got Dexter Lawrence to fill that gap. I think that they need to do something in terms of, my first choice is offensive line, period. That's not going to change. I think if Sewell's available, which I don't think he will be, or whoever is available who's at the top of their class, that's an offensive lineman. I don't care if they're a guard or a tackle. We need to scoop them up. The second place I think we need to work on, and prior to free agency, I would have said receiver for my second pick. But now I'm going to say I'd be okay if we get, unless, of course, Pitts is available, then we have to go in that direction. But I want an edge rusher or a defensive tackle for that second pick. And then we can fill in some gaps with the best players available. Hopefully it's some receivers, moving from that point. But to answer your question specifically, the only person that I can say that we let get away, and I think that there's a need to, because Dexter Lawrence, I think, fits in nicely, but he's not quite a Dalvin Tomlinson, is a defensive tackle. But I want an offensive lineman.
Just on the defensive tackle front, the Browns just released Sheldon Richardson, who's actually a really good locker room guy. It was just a salary cap thing. That's the only reason why he was released. There's a lot of people upset about it, actually. So not that you or I have any pull, but you'd be happy to have him as a Giant. So I'll just throw that out there. Lloyd, what about you?
I don't think the directions changed, but I wouldn't be mad at dropping out at 12 either, right? Like if they could drop back, right now they got 4 picks in like the top 84, right? Which is a good quality number. If they can improve that by dropping out of the 12 slot, really all depends on what Caleb Fairley does, like how far he's going to drop. But I think, when you look at secondary, you got Surtain, you got Horn, and you got Fairley, right? Like if one of those drops past 12, if there's 2 of them available at 12, Eagles probably move back, right? Because they can get one of those 2. And I think they need to go secondary, wide receiver, offensive line. That's what I think they need to do with those first 4 picks. It's been a long time since they drafted 2 secondary players back-to-back, 1 and 2. But the last time they did, they got Lito Shepherd and Sheldon Brown, and that kind of worked out well for them. So the direction hasn't changed, but I wouldn't be mad if they dropped out of the 12 slot. If Horn's there, I think they have to draft him at 12. I don't think he's going to draft much further than that. The kid's a physical specimen. He looks really good on tape. So we'll see. I just don't, but I'm not going to be mad if they take those 4 picks in the top 84 to make it 5 or 6 picks in the top 84.
So Mike and I talked about this a little bit when you had to step away, Atticus, but I think with the signing of Clowney, it kind of frees the Browns to focus solely on linebacker. I've still heard some rumbles that they might look at cornerback depending on who's available. I'm all in on them trading up to go after Micah Parsons. I think that's in the realm of possibilities. They have the ammunition to do so. I'm all for it. I think that helps your secondary. Having a third missile coming at you helps your secondary as much as anything else.
Mm-hmm.
If they stay pat, I think they still go. So before Clowney was, do we go DE or linebacker in the first round? I think this definitely solidifies linebacker in the first round. Whether I'd like to see him trade up for Parsons, but if they end up with the guy from Notre Dame or the guy from Tulsa, I'd be just as happy. And then definitely a defensive end in the second round. second or third round. They'll have somewhere in the top, their first 3 picks, there will be a linebacker and a defensive end, with a cornerback being whatever pick they don't pick first. So that's where I see them going. I don't think this changes that. I just think this paves the way for them to make some noise and trade up and get Parsons, which I would love to see. You will not hear the end of it if they do that. I recommend not being on the podcast with me because I'd like to do something live for the draft. So I think that'd be fun. We can simulcast it in the group. But I think that'd be a lot of fun. But I'll be unbearable if somehow they trade up to like say 11 where the Giants are or whatever. Super Bowl. Anyway,
I don't know why Parsons is dropping that. Why he would even drop that for? Like, I understand there's some questions about his character, but like when you look at it, and I don't know the history behind it. Like, he helped incite a riot in high school, and then he had to change high school. So what happened there? What really happened? The other thing he did is he tweeted about Urban Meyers and switching quarterbacks. Big fuck, probably shouldn't have done it, but he probably, whatever. He's a kid. And the other thing is he got in a fight with a teammate because he poured some water on his head, right? Like
something about hazing, yeah.
Listen, Mac Jones has more character issues than Parsons does. Mac Jones got 2 DUI arrests.
Well, I don't think it's so much like, there are some character concerns that might knock him out of say the top 5, but I think it's just one of those things where if you just add up, because like they're saying like 5 quarterbacks are going to go in the top 10, so that's 5 picks right there. Yep. The Bengals are going to go linemen. Those 2 receivers are going to go. So now we're already at pick 9. And we haven't even taken a defensive player off the board yet. So
all this talk about Parsons is static. He's still going to be a tremendous player, and any team would be lucky to have him.
Yep.
Right. I just think it's like it's just the right the perfect storm where there's just the needs of the teams drafting ahead, like in the top 10, offensive line, quarterback. I just think it's the perfect storm. Kyle Pitts, like a generational tight end talent. I think there's just enough there where it's not so much a knock against Parsons, just as the needs of the teams drafting ahead, like in that area where he normally go, are enough to push him. I don't think he's going to be there past 15, but I think there's enough there's enough proof to get him to like 11, 12, 13 is what I think.
So I was going to make a comment, but I think that's a good place to close out for today, right? Because I could have gone in an entirely different direction when we're talking about tight ends, whatever, but I'll save that for next week. We still got a lot to talk about. There's still a lot of speculation with the draft. Mm-hmm. And I like the idea of going live for the draft. So,
yeah.
One last question. We can do this real quick. If you were to find yourself in a bar fight, do you want the dude in off the Rams? Why am I blanking?
Aaron Donald.
You want Aaron Donald or you want Chase Claypool? Bar fight. Go. Who do you want?
No question. It's Aaron Donald.
Right. Right. I just wanted to poke fun at Chase Claypool. Anyway. I'm in a good spot. One more time, I'm going to say it for posterity. Please put respect on the name of future Super Bowl champion Jadeveon Clowney. That's where I'm going to leave it.
Did he sign with Tampa?
Cue the music. Cue the music. This is where I'm going to try to segue in for our outcast going.
Hey, can we play the fun fact that I actually set up and noticed you? I listened. I see what you do. You edited out the Eagles fun fact there.
I posted it before you sent me. I need the link to that.
Yeah, I sent it
in an email.
I sent it to you
after I had already done the video. Man, I'm not going to go back and redo my work.
All right, well, you use that one this week because I finally threw out.
Asking for a lot.
Finally threw, so you have it then. So I want to hear it this week.
I'll see if I can find it. I might have archived that email.
I'll send it again.
Gentlemen, have a good Sunday.
All right, guys. It's good to be back.
Well, everybody, that wraps up our show for this week. Thanks for listening. Here's a random weekly fun fact for you.
Per our crack research team here at the Football Trash Talk for Real Fans podcast, it took 16 presidential election cycles, a civil rights movement, 2 world wars, a trip to the moon, the birth of rock and roll, more than 26 seasons of Law and Order, all before the Eagles could figure out how to win a Super Bowl. Anyway, this has been the Football Trash Talk for Real Fans podcast. It's been a pleasure, and as always, F your team. Stay safe out there.